1 year after my grandparents passed away, I finally hired a company to renovate their old house. I told myself it was practical. The roof needed work. The pipes were old. The place had been sitting empty too long. But the truth was simpler. I missed them. And I missed the feeling that house gave me. It was the one place in my childhood that ever felt steady. I was halfway there when my phone rang through the car speakers. The contractor. Ray. His voice sounded different from our previous calls. Lower. Tight. Like he was choosing every word carefully. Ma'am. I need you to come see what we just discovered. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Did something collapse? Is there water damage? It is not that. He said. Please listen. I need you to come in person. And please do not come alone. Bring your parents and your sister with you. The request hit me like a sudden cold breeze. Bring my parents and my sister. Not bring a friend. Not bring the police. My family. That made my stomach sink in a way I could not explain yet. Ray. What did you find? I asked. I cannot say over the phone. He replied. But you need witnesses. The right witnesses. The call ended. And the road ahead blurred for a moment. I pulled into a gas station parking lot and sat there breathing through the panic rising in my chest. I called my parents. My mother answered with a tired sigh. As if I had interrupted her day on purpose. I told her to meet me at the house. I told her it was urgent. My father came on the line. Immediately suspicious. Asking what this was about. I said I did not know. That part was true. I called my sister. Tessa. Last. She sounded too interested. Like she was already enjoying the idea of something unexpected happening without her needing to lift a finger. When I got back on the road, my heart would not settle. Every mile felt louder. Every memory of that house came back in flashes. My grandmother humming in the kitchen. My grandfather in the garage, fixing something for a neighbor who could not pay. The smell of lavender and old books. The porch swing creaking at dusk. I turned onto their street and saw the house at the end of the block. Still standing like it always had. Modest and quiet. The oak tree was still there. Arms stretched wide over the roof. The front porch still sagged in the middle. The same familiar dip I used to hop over as a kid. Ray and 2 crew members were waiting in the yard. No tools in their hands. No movement. Just stillness. The kind of stillness that tells you something has already happened. Ray walked toward my car the moment I parked. His face looked pale. And his eyes kept darting toward the front door like he did not want to look at it for too long. Thank you for coming, he said. Are they on the way? Yes, I answered. What is going on? He hesitated. Then said, I want you to see it first. Then I want you to see their faces when they see it. My throat went dry. Ray, you are scaring me. I know, he said quietly. I am sorry. But I have been doing this work for 25 years. And I have never found something like this in a family home. He led me up the porch steps. The wood creaked beneath my feet exactly the way it always had. And that small, familiar sound made my eyes sting. He opened the front door. And the smell inside hit me all at once. Dust. Old wood. A faint trace of lavender. We walked through the living room. Past the framed photos I had not taken down yet. Past the hallway that led to the basement door. Ray stopped with his hand on the knob. Whatever you think it is, he said. It is worse. Then he opened the door. And as the basement light spilled up the stairs, my heart nearly stopped beating. I stood frozen at the top of the basement stairs. My fingers gripping the railing as if it were the only thing keeping me upright. The light Ray had set up below cast long shadows along the walls, stretching them into unfamiliar shapes. I had walked down these steps 100 times as a child, to fetch old boxes, to look for Christmas decorations, to hide during games of tag. But this felt different, like the house itself was holding its breath. Ray went first. Slow and careful, I followed, each step heavier than the last. The air grew cooler as we descended, carrying a faint smell of damp concrete mixed with something metallic I could not place. At the bottom, the basement opened into the familiar wide space. Except it was not familiar anymore. One entire section of the back wall had been concealed behind old shelving. The shelves were now pulled away, exposing a rough outline where the wall had been sealed over. Not recently, decades ago. The bricks were mismatched, the mortar uneven, like someone had worked quickly and never expected anyone to look closely. On the floor in front of it lay several items arranged carefully, not scattered. Someone had placed them there on purpose. A small women's locket, tarnished with age. A bundle of letters tied with twine. The paper yellowed and brittle. A wooden box, no bigger than a loaf of bread, with my grandfather's initials carved into the lid. And beside it all, a manila folder. I did not need to pick it up to recognize the handwriting, my grandmother's, and written clearly across the front was my father's name. My knees weakened, and I had to lean against the workbench to keep from falling. Ray did not touch anything. He stood back, giving me space, his face tight with concern. "We stopped the moment we saw the name," he said. "I figured this was not something we should move or read without you. Or without them, my parents. My sister." I stared at the folder, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out every other sound. Why would my grandmother hide something like this? Why seal it into a wall? And why put my father's name on it? Before I could ask anything, the sound of voices drifted down the stairs. My mother first, sharp and impatient. "What is all this about?" Then my father, lower, already defensive. "I told you this renovation was a bad idea." And finally my sister, Tessa, her tone light, almost amused. "You are being dramatic again." Evelyn, their footsteps approached. Ray straightened and stepped back further as they entered the basement. The moment my father's eyes landed on the folder, his entire body stiffened. It was subtle, but I saw it. The same way you notice a sudden change in weather before the storm hits. My mother followed his gaze. "What is that?" she asked. I did not answer. I could not. My sister moved closer, curiosity pulling her forward. She squinted at the handwriting. "That looks like Grandma's writing," she said casually. "Why is Dad's name on it?" No one spoke. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. My father finally cleared his throat. "This is ridiculous," he said. "Whatever this is, it does not concern anyone now." He reached toward the folder. Ray stepped forward immediately. "Sir, I am sorry, but I cannot let you touch that yet. This is part of the property discovery, and until the owner gives permission, it stays where it is." My father's hand froze in midair. The owner. All eyes turned to me. I swallowed hard, my pulse racing. For the first time since I arrived, I felt something steady beneath the fear. Resolve. This house had belonged to my grandparents, and now it belonged to me. I looked at my father, then at the folder, then back at Ray. I said quietly, "No one touches anything until I understand why my grandmother hid it in a wall, and why my father looks like he has seen a ghost." My father slowly pulled his hand back, as if the air around the folder had suddenly turned hot. He tried to recover quickly, straightening his shoulders. forcing a tight smile that fooled no one in that basement. "You are overreacting." "Evelyn," he said. "Your grandmother kept all kinds of papers. Old bills. Notes. She was sentimental. That does not mean anything is wrong." My mother nodded too quickly. "She always held on to things," she added. "You know how she was. Always afraid something might be lost." Her voice sounded thin, stretched, like fabric pulled too far, but my sister did not speak. Tessa just stared at the folder, her head tilted slightly, studying it the way she always did when she sensed weakness. She had that look she got right before she asked the question no one wanted to answer. Why was it hidden behind a wall? "Dad," she asked. "And why only your name?" The words landed hard. My father's jaw tightened. "That does not matter. What matters is that this house is being renovated. And you are letting strangers dig up old nonsense that should stay buried." His eyes flicked to Ray, sharp and warning. Ray did not back down. "Sir, this is not normal construction debris. This is deliberate concealment. And the homeowner has every right to know what was hidden here." Homeowner. The word hung in the air again. Heavier this time. I stepped forward, closer to the items on the floor. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to breathe. "Grandma was careful," I said quietly. "She labeled everything. She wrote dates on birthday cards. She kept receipts from 20 years ago. She would not hide something like this unless she was afraid. Afraid of what my mother asked. Afraid of someone finding it," I said, looking straight at my father. The basement felt colder suddenly. My father laughed once, short and sharp. "You are letting your imagination run wild. Whatever you think you see here, it is not real." That was when I noticed something else. A small crack along the sealed wall, barely visible unless you were looking closely, and tucked into that crack, half hidden by dust, was a folded piece of paper. I crouched down before anyone could stop me and gently pulled it free. The paper was brittle, the edges soft with age. My grandmother's handwriting filled the page. Not neat like the folder label. Shaky. Rushed. My chest tightened as I read the first line. "If anyone finds this, it means I did not live long enough to explain." My mother gasped softly. My father stepped forward. "Evelyn, put that down." I did not. I kept reading. "I am writing this because I am afraid. Not of dying, but of what will be said after I am gone. I am afraid the truth will be rewritten by someone who has always known how to make himself look innocent." My hands shook harder now. Tessa inhaled sharply. "Who is she talking about?" I did not answer. I did not need to. My father's face had gone gray. I folded the paper carefully and held it to my chest. "Whatever is in that folder," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "It stays right here until I read it. And no one leaves this house until I understand why my grandmother was afraid of her own son." My mother whispered, "Please do not do this." I looked at her. Really looked at her. I am already doing it. Because whatever my grandparents tried to protect with silence had just been uncovered, and it was no longer buried. My father backed away a step, as if the words on that fragile piece of paper had physical weight. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, his confidence draining in real time. My mother reached for his arm, instinctively protective. But even she looked uncertain now. This was no longer about old paperwork or sentimental clutter. This was about fear. Real fear. And my grandmother had written it down because she knew she would not be believed later. Tessa broke the silence first. Her voice was softer than I expected. "Dad, what is she talking about? What truth?" He did not answer her. Instead, he turned to me, his tone shifting from dismissal to control. "Evelyn, give me that note. This is private family business. You do not understand what you are doing." I held the paper tighter. "I understand enough to know Grandma was scared. And she was scared of you." The words landed hard. My mother inhaled sharply. "That is not fair," she said. "Your father took care of them. He handled everything when they got older. Handled everything." The phrase echoed uncomfortably. Ray cleared his throat. Clearly uncomfortable, but unwilling to leave. "Mom," he said to me, "if there is documentation hidden in the structure of the house, you may want legal guidance before anyone removes it. Just to protect yourself. Protect yourself." I nodded slowly. That made sense. This was already bigger than a family argument. My grandparents had not just hidden keepsakes. They had created a record. And records exist for a reason. I turned back to the folder on the floor. My grandmother's handwriting stared up at me. Steady and deliberate. Completely different from the rushed note in my hand. This folder had been prepared. Planned. She had expected someone to find it eventually. I knelt down and opened it. Inside were documents I did not expect. Bank statements. Property records. Letters addressed to my grandparents from a lawyer I did not recognize. And at the top, a handwritten list in my grandmother's careful script. Things your father was never meant to control alone. My breath caught. I scanned the list. Accounts I had never heard of. A safety deposit box. A trust established years before my grandparents passed. And next to several items, one word written again and again. Witness. Tessa leaned over my shoulder. Reading. "What does that mean?" "It means Grandma planned for someone to challenge him," I said quietly. My father's voice rose. "Sharp now. This is nonsense. Those accounts were managed jointly. I was helping them. They trusted me." "Did they?" my sister asked. He rounded on her. "Stay out of this." That was the moment I knew. Not suspected. Knew. Innocent people do not panic when paper appears. They explain. They clarify. They do not try to shut everyone down. My mother's hands trembled. "Please," she said to me. "You are tearing this family apart." I shook my head. "I am not tearing anything apart. I am opening something that was sealed shut." I looked at Ray. "I need copies of everything before anything is moved. And I want the renovation paused." He nodded immediately. "Of course." My father took another step back, his voice dropping. "Evelyn, if you do this, you cannot undo it." I met his eyes. Neither could Grandma. That is why she hid the truth instead of trusting you with it. No one spoke after that. The basement felt smaller. The walls closer. The past was no longer something we talked around. It was standing right in front of us, demanding to be acknowledged. And, for the first time, my father had nothing to say. No one moved for a long moment after I asked Ray to pause the renovation. The basement felt thick with unfinished words. My father stood near the stairs, his arms hanging stiffly at his sides, staring at the open folder as if it might accuse him out loud. My mother kept glancing between him and me, her face tight with fear and something close to regret. Tessa watched everything quietly, no longer amused, no longer detached. She was thinking, and that worried me almost as much as my father's silence. I carefully placed the note back into the folder and closed it. Not to protect him. To protect the evidence. My grandmother had been methodical. She had prepared for this moment in a way I never had. And I was not about to undo her careful work by letting emotions take over. "We need to take a break," I said. "Everyone. This is too much to process standing in a basement." My father scoffed weakly. "Running away will not change anything." I looked at him calmly. Neither will pretending this does not exist. Ray suggested we move upstairs. The light in the basement felt harsh now, exposing too much all at once. We gathered in the living room, sitting in the same places we had occupied countless times during holidays and birthdays. But nothing felt familiar anymore. My mother finally spoke. Her voice was low, almost pleading. "Evelyn, your grandparents were old, confused sometimes. You know how memory gets. They may have misunderstood things." I shook my head. Grandma wrote dates, names. She kept copies. Confused people do not build systems like this. My father stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous." He paced the room, running a hand through his hair. "I handled their finances because someone had to. They trusted me. They asked me to." "Did they ask you to hide things in the walls?" Tessa asked quietly. He stopped pacing. That was the first time my sister truly chose a side. Not mine. Not his. Just the truth. My father's voice hardened. "You do not know what you are talking about." Tessa did not back down. "Then explain it. Explain the sealed wall. Explain the witnesses list. Explain why Grandma wrote that note." Silence answered her. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not triumph. Just certainty. Whatever this was, it was no longer a question of if something had happened. It was a question of how far it went. I picked up my phone. "I am calling a lawyer. Someone independent. Someone who will look at this without family pressure." My mother gasped. "You cannot do that without discussing it with us first." I met her eyes. "I can. And I am." I stepped into the kitchen to make the call, my hands shaking slightly as I dialed. As the phone rang, I thought of my grandparents sitting at that old table, whispering when they thought no one was listening, of my grandmother's careful handwriting, of the fear she had lived with quietly. When I returned, my father looked smaller, not physically, emotionally, like a man who had spent his life controlling narratives and was now watching one slip away. "If you go down this road," he said quietly, "you will destroy everything." I shook my head. "No, I will finally understand it." Tessa stood up beside me. "Whatever you find," she said, "I want to know the truth too." That surprised both of us. Ray cleared his throat. "I will secure the site and document everything. No one touches anything until you say so." I nodded, grateful, as my parents left soon after, their footsteps heavy with unspoken fears. I stayed behind in the living room. The house felt different now. Not haunted. Honest, my grandparents had not just left me a house, they had left me the truth, and I was finally ready to face it. That night, I stayed at the house alone. Ray had offered to lock everything up and have someone keep an eye on it. But I needed to be there. I needed to sit in the quiet and feel what my grandparents must have felt when they realized silence was the only protection they had left. The living room lamp cast a warm circle of light across the worn rug, and beyond it the house fell into shadow. I could hear the old oak branches tapping softly against the roof like a slow warning. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my grandmother's handwriting. The word witness. The sealed wall. My father's face when he saw the folder. Fear does not appear out of nowhere. It grows where something has been hidden too long. The next morning, a local attorney met me at the house. Her name was Denise Carter. She was calm, direct, and she did not treat this like family gossip. She treated it like a case. I walked her through everything, from Ray's call to the hidden space to the documents in the folder. She listened without interrupting, then asked one question that made my throat tighten. "Do you believe your father exploited your grandparents financially?" I stared at the kitchen counter for a moment, trying to steady myself. I believe my grandmother feared he would, I said. And I believe she created a record because she thought no one would believe her after she was gone. Denise nodded. Then we start with the facts. We secure copies of everything. We locate the trust and the safety deposit box. We request account histories. And we do it through proper channels. If your father did nothing wrong, the records will show it. If he did, the records will show that too. The simple steadiness of her voice made me feel less alone. By mid-afternoon, we had a plan. Ray provided photographs, timestamps, and a written statement describing exactly where and how the hidden space was discovered. Denise filed requests for documentation and advised me to keep all communication with my parents in writing. No calls. No private meetings. No sudden apologies that would blur boundaries. When my father called, I let it go to voicemail. His message was short. Evelyn, stop this. You do not know what you are doing. I did know. I was finally doing the thing my grandparents never had the power to do. I was asking the questions out loud. My mother texted later. Softer than him. Please. You are hurting your father. Your grandparents would not want this. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I walked into the living room and looked at the framed photo of my grandparents on the mantel. My grandmother was smiling in that picture, but her eyes had always carried something deeper. A quiet strength, a quiet caution. I thought about the sealed wall again, about how much effort it would take to hide something like that, about how many nights my grandmother must have sat with fear and decided that leaving a record was safer than confronting a son who had learned how to control everyone around him. The truth did not feel like revenge. It felt like responsibility. A week later, Denise called me with the first confirmation. The trust existed. It had been established years earlier, and there had been changes made to it in the months before my grandparents passed away. Changes that did not match what my grandmother had written. Changes that carried my father's signature. And not hers. My stomach dropped. But my mind stayed clear. Denise said quietly. We need to investigate whether those signatures were legitimate. And we need to check what was removed from the safety deposit box. I sat down at the kitchen table where my grandparents used to drink coffee together every morning. The sunlight through the window made the dust float softly in the air. For the first time, I could almost feel them there, not as a memory, as a presence, as if they had been waiting for someone to finally see what they could not say out loud. I did not know how this would end, but I knew one thing with complete certainty. My grandparents had tried to protect the truth. Now it was my turn. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, and want more like this, a like or subscribe truly helps me keep going. And if you have any thoughts or feelings you want to share, I always appreciate reading your comments.